Today I'm making a raised garden box for my mother-in-law. I'm going to use some cedar fence pickets and a 2x4 piece of redwood for the legs, but here we go. So I'm going to start off by just breaking the lengths down to a more manageable length to cut on my table saw. There's no real reason to make precise cuts for this box, but I can't really help myself, and plus, you know, I want my mother-in-law to like me. I'm going to rip them down a little. I want the height of the box to be 13 inches, and I wanted to clean up the edges on the pickets. Too close. You're still too close. You're freaking me out. I'm on record still. Okay. So another unnecessary step, I'm going to put a little V-groove on the joins. It'll give it a little bit of detail to look at, but it isn't needed. So feel free not to do that if you're going to make my mother-in-law a planter box. This is kind of turning into a disaster with the cedar that I'm using. As I'm milling it, it's just starting to cup like a ton. Like, can you see that? I mean, you don't need the straight edge. But that's kind of like, they're all doing that. So I was trying to cut a groove to make a floating tongue to hold them in line. But all my grooves are going to be different widths because of how cupped this board is. The only way I can think to join the exterior corners is just to butt nail and glue, because there's nothing else I can do. There's no... What do you do? Does anyone know? Glue, staple nailer, quick and dirty. So I'm making a floating tongue to join the boards together. Ripping narrow pieces on a table saw can be a little sketchy. Using a feather board to keep pressure against the fence to make it safe. Well, because the board's really cupped, I had to kind of tailor make the sliding tongues. And I didn't do them full length because that would just make the job way too hard to assemble them. So I've got everything kind of assembled dry. Now I'm going to separate them, put this box together. Well, this is a planter box, it's not furniture, so I'm not going to get too creative on any of the joins. The hardest part was with the grooves all being different sizes, because when I ran it down the table saw, with the cupping, the grooves just weren't consistent. There was wider spots, narrower spots, so I had to find places where the tongues would fit. I'm using staple nails, like I said, and screws. These will all be hidden by the legs, so I'm not worried about the aesthetic of the staples or screws. So my little helper helps me out a little bit when I'm assembling, or not using power tools. I keep him out for that, unless someone's watching him. But he likes to get involved in the design sometimes and make a few changes, which we'll see in a second. Do you know who drew on the planter box? Do you know who drew that?
Yeah.
Who was it?
Me.
It was you?
Yeah.
Luckily it's for your grandma, huh? It's resawn, so I can't sand it. It's getting clear coat, so I can't, I don't know, eraser maybe? So my first ever garden box attempt was a complete failure. Back in New Zealand when I was in my 20s, I was doing a weekend project for a client whose house I was already working at. I went to go dig holes to put the posts in, and it was bamboo that had been dug to the floor, and I couldn't dig even a square inch out of the thing. And then I hit a wasp nest, and then I got stung like 3 or 4 times, and then I'm like, screw this, I quit. And then my car wouldn't start, and I think I left my car there overnight and then came back the next day to get it towed. I don't even remember how I got home that day, but at least this time I'm working in my own garage, so even if my car doesn't start, I'm already home, so what could really go wrong? I've also got another garden box in my backyard, which I kind of gave it a little bit of a reconditioning. It's probably about 4 or 5 years old now. and that'll be coming out in a video as I'm working on my side yard right now. Alright, so the box is put together. I'm just going to clamp it and then get on the legs. Get on the legs. Get on the legs. Time for the legs. I got the redwood 2x4 from Home Depot. Finding a good piece in Home Depot is difficult, but it's not impossible. And I got some pretty good stuff, so I was happy. I'm going to take the corner of the inside of the legs out so it sits into the box, holds it together. I set up a stop block to get my cuts the same consistency and length. Also, the legs are over length at this point. I will cut them to their final length after all the cuts are made. That way, if I don't like one of the cuts, I can cut a little more out and it's not too late. I like to leave the length cuts to the very end. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room to fix any mistakes if you make one, which you don't because you're the best. Yes, and I'm talking about myself. You need a compliment sometimes. So what has 4 legs? Everything, just about. Well, we don't, but just about everything else. I've got some redwood 2x4s also for a bottom rail and then a top rail. The top rail will have like a pitch so that water runs off. And then the bottom rail, redwood's just a little bit better, so if dirt gets on it, it's gonna be okay. And give it more structure, because the cedar isn't really got structure, it's pretty cardboardy. So the redwood between the legs is gonna hold it together. So I'm cutting the widths, and after that I'm gonna cut grooves on there so I can install them with the tongues, just like I put together the cedar. This will lock everything in place and keep it nice and strong. If you're curious about the tools that I'm using, I have them linked in the description box below. I don't have like a lot of really fancy high-end tools, but I can do most about anything with the stuff that I have, if you're interested. Beep. Alright, I've got the legs made and the top and bottom rails milled, not cut to length, but I'm going to put the legs on and then install the top and bottom rail and call this project Dunskies. I'm using wood glue and screws to hold the legs to the box. It'll be plenty strong enough because there's no real weight on the legs or the box. The weight's going to be on the bottom, which is the bottom rail will hold that on, and hopefully that's on strong enough. We'll see. This is a simple one-day project, and I could have simplified it a lot more. I could have just nailed the cedar straight to the legs and, you know, put it together in 20 minutes, but I wanted it to look a little more decent than that. So I went this route. So the bottom rail will go between the legs. I have a groove to match the groove so we can get a tongue in there. You know what I mean? And I'll do a pocket screw here and I'll do those in a minute. Rightio. The bottom rail is the weakest point of this whole build. Like I'll have the mesh sitting on it, stapled to it, which is going to hold up all the soil, which is quite heavy, especially when it's moist. As I'm doing this voiceover, I'm even questioning myself, did I actually make this strong enough? I mean, we'll see. Hopefully. I might have to make some repairs in the future sometime, but it's not a forever project anyway. It's a planter box. They deteriorate. So I got this perfect piece of reinforcing mesh. It's going to make the bottom of the box, I guess. Then I'll line that with something like wheat cloth or whatever to keep the soil in. Definitely thinking about it now, I'd definitely design it differently for next time. Like if I was going to actually make these and sell them, I'd make it stronger and probably route a groove in the leg for the bottom rail to slide into, which would hold it together. Also, if I got into a situation where I was making planter boxes to sell for a living, I'd probably just, I don't know, have to reassess my life at that point. So this is going to be hard for some of you to watch. I'm using plastic here to protect the planter box. I know that's controversial and some people are going to freak out, and if you have the biggest panic attack in the comment section, I will read out your comment on my next video. I can't wait. But, you know, if you don't protect the wood with the plastic, then the wood doesn't last as long, then they're cutting down more trees and, you know, trucks on the road, so, you know, the penguins are screwed. Anyways, so I'm putting the top rail on. There's a 5-degree bevel on that, so the water will actually drain into the planter box. as opposed to running down the side and making it look dirty and nasty. I'm using the tongue and groove to join the redwood to the cedar, and then I'm going to nail into the legs and then nail through the miter. The nail holes on the face aren't preferable, but I will fill them in a minute. The blue clamp I'm about to use is a Rockler bar clamp, and the person that I bought it off twice has tried to stop me from buying it, saying that they're not that good, and I love it. It's really lightweight. You can't use too much pressure on it, but it does a great job. So I'm filling the holes with CA glue and sawdust, which you could use wood glue and sawdust too to do the same thing. The CA glue dries a lot faster. Actually, it dries instantly if you use an activator, which I will show you. It comes in a can, you just spray it on, and about 2 seconds later you can sand it or chisel it back. I'm not going to finish it right now because maybe I might apply a coat of spar urethane to the cedar. Redwood, no, because I like to let redwood season for a little bit, maybe 3-6 months. Let it lose some of that pink color, get it to fade a little, turn a little gray, and then I'll put the spar urethane on it at that point, and it'll keep it that color for a while. Or maybe just leave it raw, let it age out like me. Nothing wrong, a little gray. Aye. Alright, cool. Here's the finished product. I'm happy with the way it came out. Looks okay. I'm delivering it to my in-laws, add some dirt and compost, and it's ready for planting. If you enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe, and you can click the video on the screen to continue watching.